Okay, let's just start broad picture, which I always think this is kind of the hardest question to answer. But tell me a little about you, your family, and your beginnings.
Yeah, well, I live currently in Oregon in um, a town called Newberg, Oregon, which is outside of Portland. And I have four children, and I've been married to my husband for 25 years. His name's John. And my oldest is 28. And I have a son who's about to get married, like in a
Wow.
week. He's getting married in a week. And then a daughter named Nova, who's our next one. And then my youngest, Ezekiel, and he's forever 15.
Okay.
We lost him in 2021. I'm an artist and do other things as well. I have a farm that we live on, and I'm a grief coach.
Hey, I'm excited to talk about all of it. Family is definitely the heart of your story. I know that these beautiful children, and you suffered the loss of your son in 2021. Can you tell us a little bit about Zeke?
Zeke was the kind of guy, I think, when people reflect on him in his life, whether it was a teacher or a coach, um, or his best friends or his family, he was the kind of guy you just liked having around. He
Mm,
was just so funny. That would be like probably the first descriptive word people would
mm,
use to describe him. And he was just born funny, like an effortlessly funny guy. Just the way he would walk across the room would make you laugh, and kind, and he just loved people. So he loved to be around people and make them feel good and kind of lift up the room. And he was just one of a kind, and he was really big. Like he was born big. He was this big, like beefy baby, and he just always was like this thick guy with this beautiful, like three dimpled smile. He has three dimples and this bright white hair, and yeah, just would light up every room he walked in. And it was hard to be around him without smiling. He just made people smile.
mm.
That's the best I can describe him, just
Yeah.
in a couple sentences. Yeah, he was just like the apple of my eye, just really adored by
Mm.
a lot of people. Yeah.
Beautiful boy.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that day in February?
Yeah, well, at the tail end of the pandemic, like we had been
Mhm.
on pretty intense lockdowns, and it was a really hard time for teens. And
Yeah.
Ezekiel had been online school. He's a football player, so he'd been getting to practice a little bit with his teammates, but not a lot of interaction with his friends outside of phones and online
Yeah.
stuff. Oregon was really strict with the lockdowns. So,
Okay.
um, yeah, at the very tail end in 2021, we were still on lockdowns. Um, I lost my son. I lost him completely unexpectedly and without warning to suicide. Um, and that day altered the rest of my life forever, the rest of our
Yeah.
family's life.
Thinking
Hmm.
back, was there any signs, things like you were maybe aware of or you weren't aware of, or that you could help with other moms who are watching out for their own kids?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard because you can go on, line or
Wow.
read how to detect warning signs, but
Hmm.
most of the signs are just kind of typical for teenage behavior, like seemingly
Okay.
moodier or a little more withdrawn, sleeping too much or sleeping too little, not taking care of, their grooming, might not be brushing their hair. Or so the warning signs I saw, in hindsight, you're like, oh yeah, I could definitely connect those to some depression going on. But
Hmm.
it was really, really typical teenage behavior, coupled with the middle of winter, February, and then the pandemic. It's like being in the middle of the COVID pandemic. So it's like,
Hmm.
it's hard. it's hard to say that there were obvious blaring signs, but there were little ones along the way that could have provoked me to have a deeper conversation with him other than, how are you doing? Because most teenage boys, if you ask, or teenagers in general, if you ask them how they're doing, are just going to give you a pat answer. So
Yeah.
it's really tough because there were and there weren't.
Okay. That makes a
Yeah.
ton of sense. I've got 2 teen boys and I'm always trying to check in on them, but they give you
Mm-hmm.
so little and then you're just trying to read between all of these gaps and
Mm-hmm.
it's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. I really wish there had just been a time when he could have come to us and opened up. So, yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that time right after. How did you even like start to get to where you are now?
Um, yeah, it was, if I think of a timeline and I go back to that moment, just everything is shattered and everything stands still. So, I mean, even, I'm almost 5 years out, and time itself feels different. And
Yeah.
it's hard to piece together a timeline of, I call it the before and after. So there is this like fault line that enters into your life and separates you from your life before and your life after this one event.
Mm-hmm.
And learning how to move through child loss alone is one of the hardest experiences that anyone can encounter
Mm-hmm.
in their lifetime. But then throwing in a stigmatized loss has a whole different type of challenge to it. So, suicide is still a stigmatized loss.
For sure.
And we've grown a lot in how we process that and accept it and talk about it as a culture, but it's still stigmatized along with drug overdoses. I think the parents I've spoken with who've lost kids to addiction carry that same weight of a stigmatized loss. So learning how to do life again after that is similar. I've heard it compared to losing a limb and learning how to function again, like with one leg. A lot of people compare it to that. I think, in all honesty, I would have rather lost a leg.
Mm-hmm.
It's shattering. It's earth shattering. So I think I had a lot to process. I think it strips you down of everything. I had a lot to process. I had a lot of support. I had a lot of really ugly and hard and terrifying days. And then I would have, little glimmers of hope come along the way. But yeah, it was just, I had to get really patient with how I looked at time. If I started thinking about how am I going to make it a whole month without my son and in this new reality, it was suffocating. I had to just literally take it 1 minute at a time.
Yeah.
And then maybe the minutes I could pace out to 10 minutes at a time, and then an hour, and then a day.
Yeah.
But that's how it was in the beginning.
I'm sorry. I'm a postpartum mom. This is there's nothing I can do about it. Getting emotional already.
Yeah.
I wondered just loss in general for moms usually, and we have these other kids, we're like, I have to help you. I've got to take care of you in this moment. Like things aren't going to be okay, but how can I make things okay for you? And it's so easy to then like, we're just breaking and falling apart, but we're just still caring for everyone. Did you
Yeah.
feel that, or were you able to be like, I have to heal and you
Mm-hmm.
have to heal on your own?
Mm-hmm. It's the worst feeling, and I'd say like it's the most distinguished feeling of helplessness I've ever felt, in acknowledging that I was incapable of fixing any of this for my surviving children. So it's like you're dealing with your own grief and pain and trauma, and then you're watching your other children walk into that same reality, and you're and your husband, and you're
Mm-hmm.
powerless to fix it because it's an unfixable thing,
Yeah.
unless Ezekiel's going to be alive again. We're not fixing
Mm-hmm.
this. So it was a really helpless feeling, but we had some really, really wise advice and a really good counselor that worked with us in the beginning. And she gave us the advice as we were grieving, just as a family, that it would be like we were all in the same river of grief, but we were all in our separate canoes. So
Okay.
we had to just stay in our own canoes. We couldn't get into each other's canoe and paddle for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that would feel really, really lonely at times. But it was important to just remember to be in your own canoe of grief at the moment. And it was true in every sense, because we were all
Mm-hmm.
grieving differently or different timelines, or I'd be in a really rough, dark spot one moment, and my husband would be feeling a little lighter, and vice versa. So yeah, we just tried to picture it like that, and knew that we wouldn't be comparing as far as how we were grieving, always wouldn't sync up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but to be okay with that, yeah, to be okay with the fact that we were just on a different timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was a very hard, but yeah, that does sound like good advice. I also wanted to ask about your relationship with your husband. Like, my husband and I have, I mean, everyone, right, goes through like their own form of grief. It's very
Right.
different from this, but it can be really easy when you're in the thick of it to
Mhm.
just not come together at the same times, and
Yeah.
or even on the same matters, and it can really start to pull you apart. I don't know if that's something
Mhm.
that you felt, or did it bring you closer? How did that affect your relationship?
Um, both. We went through the same therapist that we met with gave us the advice too, that it was really important to not judge each other
Okay.
in our grief. So also being in our own canoes, looking very different, it was just very important to not judge each other and how we were grieving. And an example of that would be, I really needed to go into my son's bedroom almost daily in the beginning, and like sit in his bed and be with his things, and grieve
Mhm.
and be in our home. And my husband couldn't be there. So he had to get in the
Mhm.
car and drive away. And I could have judged him, like, how can you not face
Mhm.
this, not face this with me? Like, are you trying to
Mhm.
escape it? But so that would be an example of how we can judge.
Yeah.
And it's really the judgment that causes the stereotypical scenario of a couple that loses a child has a high statistic rate of divorce. And
Mm.
so it's really the judgment, I think, that causes the fracturing to happen in the
Mhm.
relationship. So that advice really helped me make a mental note to not judge my husband and for him not to judge me. With that said, it was really hard not to. You have this human
Yeah.
side, and you just harbor resentment really easily when you're in a place of pain, especially. So there was just some resentment and distance and processing
Mhm.
too, my son's death. And um, yeah, it was very layered, a lot of trauma. And then it was kind of this forced shaking up of our entire lives that caused us to really face the other unhealthy things in our lives that we needed to heal from and grow from, and things that you get really busy. You just
Yeah.
are plowing ahead, trying to do life and raise teenagers and, make a living
Yes.
and all the things. And you don't tend to communication changes, and you don't tend to your marriage like a
Mhm.
garden, like we should, and
Yeah.
deal with the weeds and water it. And so there was some things in our marriage that were unhealthy. And um, you change so much. We'd been married for, at that point, 20 years, and I'm not the same person I was when I married John. So it's like You have to communicate new needs and boundaries. So it really forced us to strip down to the basics of our marriage and heal some things
Mm.
that were already present. So we both found ourselves in counseling in year 2, and it wasn't at that point we weren't getting counseling for the loss of our child. At
Okay.
that point we were getting marriage counseling. So it was
Mhm.
like a really healing, and ended up bringing my husband and I closer and forced us into to do this, to go into marriage counseling when I don't think we would have before.
Yeah,
So yeah.
that's nice.
Yeah, it was just like one of the transformational aspects of, what we went through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, I think I don't want to put words into your mouth at all, but I'm just, for me, and I think most moms I know, it's really easy for us to blame ourselves when anything goes wrong with our kids. Um, is that something you felt like you dealt with? And do you have any advice for moms who do feel that? And
Totally. I mean, in all honesty, blame is like a form of control, right? We want to know why something happened,
yeah.
especially with something so out of control that we didn't think could touch us. And
Mhm.
so it's a lot easier to blame than to admit that it was out of our control. And so I
Wow,
think it's
I've
a
never thought
natural,
of that.
yeah, it's a natural place our brain goes to try to make sense of this senseless, chaotic world.
Hmm.
And then to feel like we have a little bit more control moving forward. So absolutely. And there was part of me that I would have rather blamed myself than had people blame Ezekiel,
Yeah.
for making such a tragic decision that affected people so much. So, oh yeah, I dove into a lot of blame, and I still struggle, to this day with, sometimes my mind
Mhm.
will go there, and I have to process that in a healthy way that doesn't weigh me down with guilt, or, because
Yeah.
there were for sure things I wish I had done differently. And it the nature of suicide loss, and we're called, suicide survivors, deal with a lot of intense feelings of guilt and yeah, regret. So it's just kind of part of it.
Mm.
Big
Okay.
time.
You've talked a lot about how joy and sorrow can coexist, but when did you start discovering those moments of joy?
I mean, I can remember the first time I felt any joy in my body after Ezekiel left. And
Yeah.
I woke up one morning, and maybe it was at that 3-week mark or 1 month mark. And the mornings were really difficult because it was like Groundhog Day, waking up to a reality you didn't want to, and just hoping
Mm-hmm.
it was a nightmare you were waking up from. And so mornings were very hard. But I woke up this one morning and someone had made coffee and I just smelt it. And then I was just like, oh, that coffee smells so good. I'm just excited to go have a cup of coffee.
Mm.
And I was so shocked. It was like that feeling next to the back, over the backdrop of this intense grief and shock that I was in, was so noticeable that I remember just taking a snapshot of that and like, I think I might survive this. And
Mm.
so that was really the first thing. Um, and to this day, like I just have this sacred ritual around my coffee in the morning, because it's like, all
Mm.
right, this is one more day closer to being with my son. And it's the little things you start to wake up to, and
Mm.
they're really simple. I also remember this one time when I was sitting in my yard and just kind of practicing being still in nature and a meditation, and I heard birds singing, and it was just so vibrant and distinct, and it was like the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard in my life. Like it was the first time I'd ever heard birds in my life. And
Oh.
yeah, I remember thinking, like, have they always sounded this beautiful? Or is it just like, I just didn't take notice before? So that's kind of how I started waking up to
Mm.
the possibility of joy in my life after such horror.
So you mentioned a practice of meditation, but I don't know, has there been things that you employed to help you in the past few
Yeah,
years to survive?
I think nature is really important to me. And I think
Hmm.
that's kind of true of my personality, before I lost my son. So I just spend a lot of time in nature. And
Okay.
in the morning, I had like a ritual of journaling. And it wasn't really like a discipline practice to heal
Hmm.
that I had to force myself into. It kind of came
Okay.
organically. And I've always been a really visual person. I'm an artist. So I think in a lot of painful moments, I would have a lot of moments where I would just like close my eyes and have really healing visions. And that was
Mm.
actually one vision that's kind of about holding joy and sorrow together was my son. I had a vision of him coming out of the ocean when I was in the middle of grief. And I was sitting next to my oldest daughter and she was weeping. And he just like came on the waves out of the ocean and came on the shore with us and scooped his sister up in his arms and just cried with her, was just weeping with her. And then he like handed me this giant mug, which is kind of funny because it was like a coffee mug. And on the mug were the words joyful sorrow and really obvious letters. And like he handed it to me and just like looked at me in the eyes. And um, yeah, it was just like such a distinct vision. And I knew exactly what it meant at that moment. And it was like, this is your cup. This is the cup of your life that
Mm.
you'll be drinking from this cup for the rest of your life. And
Mm.
it's the cup of most of our lives. We
Yeah.
are holding those two paradoxes
Yeah.
together. And I was really blissfully ignorant of the amount of sorrow that can exist
Yeah.
alongside the joy. But, the pain deepens your ability to appreciate joy and
Mm.
love. So it's just this paradox. Like if you're trying to eliminate the pain and the sorrow from your life
Hmm.
to chase after the joy, you realize really quickly it doesn't work that way. And
Yeah.
it's just this radical acceptance of being okay to hold both of them together. And it can really, really expand your soul. But yeah, that vision
Mm.
was one of the most profound parts of healing in my journey, for sure.
Mm. Beautiful. You wrote a book. Um, if I could see through my tears here, I would find it. But a Monday in February. So, a story of hope after losing my son to suicide. Was that process cathartic? Was it healing? Was it traumatizing? Like, what was that experience for you?
Yeah. Um, all of that. It was all of those
Okay.
things. Like I said, I started journaling pretty soon after I lost Ezekiel because I used to journal anyway in the morning.
Okay.
Just kind of a practice I started years ago. And so I would journal in the mornings usually to just work through grief. And part of that was writing letters to Ezekiel,
Mm.
saying the things I, would have loved to have said to him.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would write a letter in response, like sit and listen to for his voice and kind of how he would respond to me. And then I would record some of the visions I had and some dreams I had in the journal. So I had compiled like so many journals because I was just like writing nonstop. And that's kind of just how I processed the grief and the pain, really honestly and really bare
Mm.
and really unedited. And so at some point in my journaling, I knew that I would write a book. I'd compile a lot of those entries. And also, part of my healing was reading other people's stories that had survived this, in particular, this type of loss. And those stories of other parents that had lost children to suicide or had just lost children were one of the biggest lifelines for me. And like, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night, and I would just like read a book at night in the beginning. And so, yeah, I knew that that was going to be part of how I was going to pay it forward for somebody else. And yeah, when I sat down to write it, I also knew it would be part of like a cathartic healing process to tell the story.
Yeah.
And I wrote all of the other sections of the books, the ones that felt more like, here's the after of my life that's been redemptive or joyful. And I waited to the very end to write about what happened, because that was hard to revisit the trauma. I had to talk about what happened that day on that Monday in February and do it in slow time. And that was a lot to face, but it was healing. I think it really helped me give it a narrative and help me accept the events of that day. So yeah, it was both cathartic and hard and all of it.
Wow. It's amazing. You've kind of taken what you've been through and now you're trying to help other people, and so you've become a grief coach, and talk to me about what that's like.
Yeah. Well, yeah, professionally, I think that I would like to be a grief coach for people or just an educator, but I think it's just organically happened relationally. Just I kind of become everyone's go-to person
Oh
who,
no.
which is, it's fine. I joke about it because it's like I'm kind of free game for people who want to share the very worst thing in their life. Because they're like,
I feel
you're,
like you would not be that person, because I'd be like, well, mine is nothing compared to yours, so I wouldn't say anything.
well, no, I think people are just like, I feel really judged. I might feel really judged by everyone in my life, but you like experience the very worst thing ever. So you're not going to judge me. So I'm just going to tell
Okay.
you like my darkest, deepest secret or like the thing I can't tell anyone else. And it just kind of has naturally happened that way. I'm like, okay, yeah, well, you're right. I'm not really phased. I'm not phased by this. And so
Yeah,
it kind of happened naturally, and it feels really life-giving to be able to
that's
encourage
amazing.
someone and tell them they're going to make it. And we can survive the very worst thing that we wouldn't think we would ever be able to survive. Like, we're very resilient people.
Yeah.
Um, and we can do this. So yeah, it's just, and then I decided to go get certified as a grief coach, although I don't think I even needed that certification.
Yeah.
but I went ahead and did that, and I went ahead and got certified as a end of life doula too, so to be able to go sit with people as they pass. And um yeah, it's just something I never would have moved into had I not experienced this. But isn't that like everything in life? Like,
Yeah.
you make certain decisions and then other decisions are kind of made for you. So yeah,
Right.
it's been rewarding. I, I
Mm,
like I like sitting with people in their grief and pain.
that's amazing. I feel like if I just think about myself, my natural response would be to avoid any more grief and pain, and you just walk towards it. And I really think that's amazing.
Yeah, it's like I joke with people. It's like my favorite subject is death, because it's like we're all going to die, and there's such deep
Yeah.
wisdom in that. And yeah, I also really, because I believe in the afterlife, like I believe we continue to exist. There's like a real encouragement in that journey. Like, everyone that you love, you will eventually lose. If you live long enough, you start to realize that if you have the privilege of getting old.
Yeah.
Um, but that we will be reunited with our loved ones. Like there's such hope in that and purpose. And so, yeah, I'm just not very afraid to talk
Mhm.
about death.
You mentioned like your belief in an afterlife. So did it shake your faith? Did you want to just burn it all down, or did it just strengthen
Hmm.
it?
Yeah, it really, really shook my faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was radical. It was a radical stripping down of everything I thought I confidently believed. So I think that same therapist that really was helpful working with our family in the beginning, in that very first session with her, I remember she came into our family home and it was just weeks after the funeral. And the very first thing she said to us when she sat down with us, she looked us in the eyes and she's like, "The God you knew before is dead."
Okay.
It was just like, oh, wow. This is a really big
Yeah.
statement. But I felt it in my bones. It was like, damn straight. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
he is.
Yeah.
I feel that. I feel that.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, yeah, the God you knew before is dead. And then she clarified and she's like, he's not big enough for this.
Mm.
You're going to be getting to know a new God, a bigger God. And I think that would encapsulate kind of the stripping down of faith. Like you have to know a version of God, a version of love is what I tell people that's big enough for this pain. And so it was just kind of getting to meet God again and trust him in this new, very vulnerable world that we woke up to. And then you're like, wow, his love really is big enough to carry me in this pain and carry my children and carry my husband
Mm.
and and he's still good. And so I think it was a beautiful awakening to a bigger source of love, than I knew before. And part of that was dismantling all the lies and all the fears and all of those parts of yourself you felt were too ugly or unlovable. And would I trade it for my son? Absolutely. You would say none of it's worth it. But am I
Yeah.
grateful that through this I've been able to just understand a bigger
Mm.
God and um, yeah, understand just more about love and compassion and what adds meaning and value to our days. Like I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for that part
Mm.
for
That's
sure.
amazing. Thank you. I wanted to talk about your like your advocacy for awareness on teen mental health and suicide
Mhm.
prevention. What have you learned? What can you share with us? That's
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking that. And thank you, just for creating a space to talk about this
yeah.
because it would have been really nice for had I been able to tune into a podcast where somebody was sharing this story and where I could have
Yeah.
had ears to maybe hear just some helpful and important things to take note of.
Mm-hmm.
But just for perspective, um, suicide is actually the second leading cause of death in kids 10 to 25. So
Okay.
statistically, CDC statistics. So we're in an epidemic. We're in
Yeah.
a nationwide epidemic. So it really is a conversation that has to be had and has to be had in the open.
Mm-hmm.
And before somebody's in crisis or before we have a sudden death in our communities to suicide. And that's usually when the conversation starts happening, is when someone's already taken their life. So having the conversation beforehand, I say, is one of the best preventative measures
Okay.
because what we've learned about suicide and what we know about it now is that most people who suffer from suicidality, from thoughts of ending their life, feel intense amount of shame around those thoughts. And it's really important to dismantle the shame and fear about talking about it for the person by initiating the conversation. And, telling our kids, like, this is honestly a very common thought among teens these days. When people are in emotional pain, it's a very actually normal place for your brain to go, to not want to exist anymore. And I think, a lot of us parents can relate with that. Remember, if you could think back to those really awkward teenage years. But what happens is, because they don't want to be a burden to the people they love the most, they really hide it and they harbor it. And so if you notice any signs of depression or withdrawal, I think one of the biggest symptoms for me and my son was withdrawal, because he was so social. So I really saw him withdrawing from friends and like not really taking calls and or hanging out with his family as much.
Okay.
And I wished I had asked him, not just, are you okay? I wish I had said, hey, I just noticed like you're withdrawing. I have to ask you, have you ever thought about harming yourself?
Okay.
Are you having thoughts of taking your life? And it's okay to ask that question. And there's a myth that people think like if you bring it up, it's going to give them the idea, but
Yeah.
that's not true. It actually disarms
Okay.
the shame and gives them an opportunity to say, yes, I am. There's a national hotline now, and that's 988. And I just tell parents and caregivers and people working with youth to memorize that number, because that can be a good starting point for people to help navigate if they have someone in their life that struggles from suicidality or mental health issues. And those trained professionals can help you look for resources in your area for your loved one to get help. And the other thing is like keeping that conversation calm and steady and not freaking out if you find out that your child has been suicidal or,
Yeah.
has even made an attempt. A lot of times, kids have had attempts already that we don't know about. So I think, keeping your tone calm allows them to proactively, tend to their emotional needs. And I think the second thing I tell people, so talking about it, asking the question, the second thing I tell people is to view suicide as a form of emotional cancer, that it's really not because a person's flawed or selfish. Most people who are suicidal are the furthest thing from being selfish. They are just broken and sensitive people. Like my son was so empathic. I think he felt the pain of all his friends and his family. He was just so tender. And they're in intense emotional pain and they just want that pain to end. And it's a place in their brain that's gotten sick. And there's so many factors that could cause that disease, that type of emotional cancer. There could be a genetic propensity to mental illness. There could be concussions from sports. There's so many factors that come into play. It can just be like not getting enough nutrients from your food, having a poor diet and not enough exercise or sunlight. There's a lot of contributing factors that can make somebody's brain get sick. And so I think that helps it feel less like that person's a bad person for going to that place mentally. It's like, no, you just got sick, and we want to help you. Just like if you'd gotten injured, at sports and I needed to take you to physical therapy and, help your knee recover. There's just going to be times where we as parents need to help our kids mentally get to a healthy place. And that just helps viewing it more like an involuntary disease or sickness or emotional cancer. So that hopefully will help
That was
people.
very helpful.
Yeah.
Very helpful. Those are things like I wouldn't have thought about, like, just having an open conversation like that? I know that can really, like, that's a tool every parent needs to know. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And then
Um,
I'd be amiss to not mention too, if you do find somebody in your home that's struggles with suicidality, keep your home very safe. So
okay.
keep lethal means locked up. And that
Okay.
can be, it can be a lot of things, but you can look for like a list of lethal means, medications, firearms. Firearms are like the leading cause
Okay.
of deaths by suicide. I think they make up like 75% of them. And it could be, sharp objects. So you can get a lockbox from your local fire department. And yeah, so I think that's the other piece, keeping your home really safe.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
great.
Which I know this is just like not a fun topic, but
It's very
so
real, though.
it's
It's
very
very
real.
real.
Hmm. Yeah.
Let's just end with talking about your life now.
I think I mentioned in the beginning, like my husband had a really hard time being in our home,
Yeah.
and I was needing to grieve in our family space. But I got to a point, actually, another really cool vision I had had of my son, that was basically him telling me to move. And we
Mm,
went out that weekend and with a realtor friend to look at some land about 50 minutes from where we used to live. And the minute I set foot on this property, it was like the first time I felt like a lightness come over my body.
oh,
And we decided to put an offer in on it. And like within that week, it was accepted. And we were living out on this farm about a month after we decided to move. So
okay.
yeah, long story short, we just started getting animals. We got some goats and some donkeys and a golden retriever that had puppies. And there's a lavender patch on the property. So I've been like making lavender essential oil and all these products. And yeah, we have a huge garden. And it's just like
Amazing.
the most incredible views. And because I love nature, it's just very, it's like this cocoon. I just think of it like this
Love
cocoon
that.
for our family to heal. So just naturally and organically, we named the farm after our son. So we called it Zeke's Farm.
Aw,
And it's just kind of been this oasis for our own family to heal, but also for other hurting hearts and friends and family to come and heal. And there's just something really magical about the land. I can't
it's
even
beautiful.
explain it, but everyone feels that they'll like just, it's almost like you just go through this, I don't know, you just get into this bubble of healing. You like leave the city, drive out to these country roads. And then when you set foot on the property, people can just feel it. It's just very healing and peaceful and beautiful. So that's that's Zeke's farm. That's where we live now in the
I love
after of our
it.
life. So
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty happy.
That's great. I
Yeah.
loved speaking with you. Do you
You
have
too.
anything you want to offer to any other grieving moms?
Yeah, if you've oh gosh, that's gonna make me cry. But if
Mm,
if you're if you're a mom or anyone that's found yourself to this conversation who's feeling alone in your grief, I hope that my words have made you feel less alone. And um, I would want I would want anyone to know that's um, starting out that the 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 sooner you understand that grief really is just a different form of love, the more you'll be able to accept it as a gift and give into its course and let the tears be looked at more as a gift of love than something you need to resist and push away. And the anger is just a cry of love. So I think that really helped me in the beginning, was just accepting the fact that grief is love, and we feel this much pain and sadness because we loved the person that much, and that's a gift. I always say I would have rather had Ezekiel and lost him than not had him at all. And that's a really hard thing to say. And, but it's true. Yeah. So one day at a time, just take it one day at a time.
Incredible advice. Thank you so much for being here, for being willing to share your story. That must have taken such bravery. You did an incredible job.
Thank you so much.
I will link your book below for anyone who wants to read that, who needs that. And then how can people contact you or follow you?
Really easy. Just lilycrowder.com. So I have a website. You can contact me there. Social media. I'm active there quite a bit on Instagram. And yeah, that's about it. Just lilycrowder.com. Easiest way.
Amazing. Thank you again.
Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. It was an honor.